Hello, and welcome to the Fintech Times podcast, focused on discussing the latest fintech topics and trends from around the world. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report all the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world.
Hello, and welcome to this very special episode of the Fintech Times podcast. My name is Polly Jean Harrison. I am the features editor here at the Fintech Times, and today we have a fantastic episode for you all around buy now, pay later. I am here with the wonderful Paul Chandler, the sales director in Europe from CompassPlus Technologies. Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, Polly. Thank you for having me on board. Thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have, and we're really going to get into the nitty-gritty of buy now, pay later. But first of all, it would be fantastic if you could give me just a little bit of an introduction as to yourself and to your company as well, and the kind of things that you get up to.
Yes, well, I've been in the payments industry since 2007. So relatively a newcomer compared to many of my industry peers, but it's a great space to be at this moment in time. CompassPlus Technologies is quite well known. We have been around for 30 years. We service more than 400 financial institutions internationally, and that's obviously growing. Architecting the correct payment solutions for our customers is actually quintessentially what we do and what we strive to achieve every time. And how do we do this? Well, at the core of everything that we do is our award-winning third-generation platform. And this is called Transaxis. And Transaxis is designed with innovation and the future in its very DNA. So Transaxis is unlike any payments platform on the market. It's not card-centric, it's token-based. It's not cloud-ready, it's cloud-native. And it's not API-enabled, it's API-first. So it cuts through the vendor noise and use technology that it is fit for purpose in an ever-changing payments landscape where the future is increasingly unknown, which I think brings us very nicely onto buy now, pay later.
Amazing stuff. Well, thank you so much again for joining me today. And I feel like the topic that we're going to cover, buy now, pay later, is a pretty big one, right? Like it's always constantly trending. It's always, it's the buzzword, right? Not only in sort of fintech, but also kind of in the wider world as well, like from a consumer perspective. Even though I think buy now, pay later has been around the block for a little while, depending on, how you look at it and how you see it. But I guess, Paul, a good place for us to start on this would be the current state of the BNPL market and how things have evolved. So I don't know if from your perspective, it'd be great to understand what that looks like to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think you're quite right to say what you said. Buy now, pay later can be likened to the phenomenon of faster payments, frankly. We all know how that took off once the consumer got their hands on it. And it's ubiquitous today. But buy now, pay later is certainly in the same boat. And oddly, there are some clear statistics about this. According to Juniper research, more than 900 million people worldwide will actually use BNPL by 2027. Now that's astonishing when it's compared to only 360 million in 2022. And I think there are many reasons for this. Some are quite obvious, but BNPL provides an avenue for affordability, in particular at a time when the cost of living is described, as we all know, to be in such a crisis at the moment. And BNPL has also become very popular, not just amongst the Z-Gen or the Gen Z rather, and the millennials, but also increasingly with older generations, and I include myself in that, including retirees who are feeling the constraints of living within a fixed budget today. So, I think it's fair to say that BNPL usage will continue to grow exponentially over the years, and it's truly, truly here to stay.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, obviously, from the consumer perspective. Like you, myself, I also find myself using buy now, pay later quite a lot, especially now we're coming up to Christmas. I think it'd be interesting to understand kind of from a sort of merchant and a provider perspective, how is that appealing to them as well, not just from the consumer side?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's highly appealing to merchants, in particular, because it actually draws in the customer. So it increases the value proposition that they're offering to customers, the likes of you and I, as consumers. It gives us the ability to click and basically draw us in, lock us in for a longer term, and strengthens their value proposition without any doubt.
Amazing, of course. And obviously, speaking of, the providers, who are the players that are currently dominating the market within buy now, pay later? I mean, I know obviously there are the big names that we all know,
Yeah.
But who's really kind of making waves when it comes to buy now, pay later?
Okay. Well, I think we all know, looking at the market today, it's typically non-financial brands which dominate the BNPL market to date. But new entrants in the form of traditional banks and payment networks are jumping in, and albeit coming quite late, but they're getting on board the BNPL train as quickly as possible. So banks are, I think, very well positioned to provide a more responsible approach to BNPL. They have more sophisticated scoring, more historical data on their customers' behaviours and habits. They're better positioned to make more informed, financially responsible decisions. So with these long-term pre-existing relationships, you could argue that banks actually have consumer trust, which is very important. So the problem for me, as I see it, is that banks are often lack the agility, the flexibility of fintechs with their new, more nimble technology stacks. And banks typically, therefore, are slow to manoeuvre, cautious in their approach. But given the wide-ranging appeal of buy now, pay later, FIs need to take a closer look at their customer segments to see how BNPL can be used to retain and engage customers simply by elevating their lending product suites in order to be competitive, and also need to consider partnering with a proven solution provider in order to speed up their time to market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously, buy now, pay later being a great segment that it is, and it's making loads of waves. It makes sense for banks to be kind of trying to get in on it and capitalize on it, especially for their customers as well. But what are the challenges then involved with a bank trying to enter the market? I think, while they've got like you said, while the banks have the trust, they kind of lack that flexibility and innovation. And does that make things difficult for them trying to get into BNPL?
I think it does. In particular, for example, the interest that's out there today in embedded finance, it's growing exponentially as well. And agile challenger banks are publicly gaining traction, and the race for buy now, pay later market share is well and truly on. And anyone not actively getting involved will probably be left behind, and banks are only too well aware of this. So the issue, I think, is knowing where to start developing their BNPL offerings. And this is an issue, obviously, for many, many banks. But buy now, pay later is, I think, such an exciting payment method, it's such an exciting value proposition that even offering the simplest proposition will immediately differentiate providers and establish a brand presence in the market. So value propositions also can be evolved, launched in phases, or be expanded and flexed to suit both customers and market needs. So being inactive now will make it harder and more time-consuming to stand out further down the line in a more saturated market. So banks have got to play the catching up game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it is that saturated market that makes things a little bit more tricky, because obviously when you're coming in to a market that's already got so many different players and already got the players that have the trust, I think there's some big names right now in buy now, pay later that people certainly look to now as sort of like the go-to providers for this sort of thing. So trying to come into that and enter into that, even for a bank that already has its own consumer base and already has its own trust base as well, I can see why that would be really difficult. But I guess, where do banks even start then? If they want to get in on the buy now, pay later scene, they want to start offering it to their consumers, where do you even start to go about offering something like that, or even like to think about offering something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Polly. I think today buy now, pay later manifests itself, I think, in many different forms. So for a player looking to enter the market and differentiate in an increasingly crowded marketplace, which is becoming, the sheer volume of options available can appear to be very overwhelming. So for example, buy now, pay later functionality can be offered through mobile apps, at POS terminals or e-checkouts, via ATMs and other channels. A virtual physical card can be issued as part of the package. One-off fixed credit or a flexible credit line can be provided alongside different instalment plans, such as pay in 3, pay in 6, pay in 12, all with their own interest rates, fees, and other combinations. I think any BNPL offering can be supplemented with loyalty programs. That's another value add there. There's a world of possibilities in terms of differentiating features available and combinations thereof for players looking to enter the BNPL space. But despite the number of variants available, buy now, pay later offerings can be loosely placed, I think, into 4 models, and that's post-purchase off-card, card-linked, at-purchase off-card, and merchant-funded.
That's really interesting. Could you go into these models a little bit more and tell me a little bit more about the models and also how to determine which of these models is right for you?
There's really, as I said, the 4 models, but post-purchase off-card, buy now, pay later. This model enables customers to complete transactions with their preferred payment method and opt to convert eligible transactions into instalments after purchases have been made. It's most suitable for consumer banks, in my view. When adopting this model, there is no additional complexities of managing merchants, integrating with online shops and POS terminals. It also reduces credit risk in comparison to traditional credit products, as customers are less likely to default on payments. And you then have card-linked buy now, pay later, and this model enables customers to pay for purchases in store and online using a buy now, pay later card. This typically happens in 3 ways: before purchasing, during purchase, and after purchase. So suitable for consumer banks and PSPs who serve merchants. Buy now, pay later cards can be used at any merchant, online and offline, and it also is also built on the International Payment Network's buy now, pay later rails, and that's, I think, very exciting. You also have at purchase off-card buy now, pay later, and this model allows customers to pay for goods or services using buy now, pay later at the merchant's e-checkout and or POS terminals. So at purchase off-card buy now, pay later, providers can offer this model in 2 ways. Direct to consumers, whereby the consumer registers for an account with the BNPL provider and has a direct relationship with them. A white-labelled buy now, pay later, whereby providers allow merchants to create their own branded BNPL offering while they work as a technology supplier in the background. And most suited, I think, to PSPs. This is the only model where BNPL providers typically own the relationship with both merchants and consumers. And this model can also be offered as direct to consumer or as a white label proposition. And then finally, you have the merchant-funded BNPL. This model allows customers to make BNPL purchases at the point of sale, financed by the merchant itself or a third-party lender contracted to the merchant. Most suitable for merchants and payment service providers wishing to provide white-label BNPL. So for this model, the merchant funds the BNPL facility and the BNPL solution is white-label. And this is useful in regions where BNPL providers are not yet present.
So it's really interesting to have these 4 different models, and I think obviously it would make it very easy then, or at least simpler for banks or other institutions to try and identify where they can enter the market when it comes to buy now, pay later, and really sort of hone in on where it makes sense for them to be offering these solutions.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to sort of providers and companies like CompassPlus Technologies helping them to sort of guide the way and play a part in these financial institutions and PSBs be able to deliver buy now, pay later to their account holders and customers, I guess it does help sort of make things a lot easier in the long run if people want to enter the market, right?
That's absolutely, and in fact, it's paramount, I would say, given that most institutions entering the market today are slightly behind the curve. So it's imperative to make sure you have the correct partner. And we have global BNPL customers today. Some of the largest in the world are using our technology to achieve this and using our services. But I frankly would just simply say, don't wait until it's too late. There's still time to enter this amazing market and become a recognised player before it becomes totally saturated. Launch and evolve. Your initial BNPL solution does not need to be your last. It's better to evolve your offering to suit customer and market needs than to miss the boat entirely. So, start now and evolve for sure. And again, more importantly, find the right software vendor, someone that's got experience at doing this. And remember that not all vendors can offer all models. Not all vendors will meet your immediate needs, and not all vendors can align with your long-term vision. And I think that's probably the best advice I can give any institution wishing to enter the BNPL space.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, CompassPlus Technologies you've released the ultimate guide to buy now, pay later, right? Which has a lot of more of this information that we've already talked about today in.
Yes, we have, and it's available on the website. I do encourage everyone to come and read it. It is a booklet. but it's extremely well written, and looks at many of the models that I've talked about today. The download of this document has been phenomenal. It's the largest, it's the biggest download we've ever had on any of our thought leadership papers. So I encourage everyone to take a look at that booklet.
Fantastic. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining me today. I feel like we've really done a deep dive into buy now, pay later and how things can work for your business. I wanted to give you just one final opportunity. Do you have any final thoughts you wanted to impart? I know you've given these fantastic takeaways and sort of the main keen advice you would give. Is there any sort of information you'd wanted to give just before we end this?
Not really, other than it's Black Friday and everyone should be clicking now, and I will be certainly had my buy now pay later finger ready to press. So nothing more to add.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for joining me once again. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. And hopefully everyone who listens will learn a great deal about buy now, pay later. And if they're from a bank or financial institution, they'll learn exactly how they can start getting on the hype train.
Absolutely. And we're here to help. Just pick up the phone.
Amazing stuff. Well, thank you, Paul. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Polly. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Fintech Times podcast. We hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as we did. Don't forget to check us out at thefintechtimes.com and subscribe to our monthly publication to keep up to date with all the latest fintech news.